From the studio of Blackwater Media in the great city of Atlanta, I'm Dr. William Lester. Welcome to Blackwater Media's Native American Files. To a hunter alone in the woods at twilight, the long black being might seem like another person from afar. But by the time they realize their mistake, it's much too late. Choctaw legend describes this creature, also called Nalosa, as having a humanoid body, a shriveled face, small eyes, and long pointed ears. It allegedly lives in the depths of the woods, usually near a swamp, where it waits for unsuspecting hunters to cross its path. Once someone wanders by, it patiently stalks them, hovering along the trail. Sometimes the long black being is said to call out, mimicking human voices. Other times, they've described as springing across the hunter's path. On either occasion, the hunter is faced with a sight so frightening that they will likely lose consciousness. And that's when the long black being strikes. As the hunter lies unconscious on the ground, the long black being swoops down and pricks the victim with a thorn or a quill. When the hunter awakes, it's probably with a degree of relief. They have no idea that the long black being has bewitched them. At first, the hunter will seem only unusually grumpy, but their bad mood will intensify and become violent. As the long black being's spell takes over, they'll feel compelled to kill everyone close to them. The long black being is also described as bringing death to the Choctaw tribe. In one account, a Choctaw doctor described seeing a long black being walk down a hill through a churchyard. Soon afterward, a terrible flu struck the Choctaw people, killing many. Though nefarious, the long black being is said to have a family of its own. Legend states that the children of the long black being can remove their internal organs and drift through the air. They're allegedly found along the edges of marshes. And then there are the stick people. Like skinwalkers, stick people are so feared that most Native Americans who believe in them won't even speak their names. Out of fear of conjuring or insulting them, these forest spirits are instead referred to as stick people or sometimes stick Indians. Numerous tribes have stories about stick people. The Salish describe them as Bigfoot-like beasts. The Nez Perce say that they're more like little people. And some tribes say that they appear almost human. But all agree, the stick people are hot-tempered and mischievous. Their stick nickname possibly comes from the joy they derive from poking sticks in teepees. Said to roam the deep forests of the Pacific Northwest, the stick people are usually spotted at night. They're often seen snatching fish from nets, nabbing clothes from men, and stealing food. But be warned, trying to stop or hinder these forest spirits can be deadly. Infamously vindictive, legend states that it doesn't take much to set them off. They can drive people insane, kidnap them, or simply devour them. Stick people can be hard to avoid, however, because they are also said to shapeshift. These roguish and dangerous spirits can easily take on the appearance of a wild animal. Often, they'll even lure people into the woods by mimicking animals or whistling. Of all their abilities, the stick people's desire to seek revenge is their most defining feature. No matter how small the slight, they will bear a grudge. The evil Piasaw was described in Native American lore as a monstrous creature that had a wingspan of more than 50 feet. It was so strong that it would carry off a live buffalo in its enormous talons. Part bird, part reptile, part fish, this terror of the sky struck fear in the hearts of even the bravest Illini warriors, especially after it developed a taste for human flesh. The name Piasaw was derived from the Algonquin Illiniwek language and means a bird that devours men. The Illiniwek were a group of 12 or 13 Native American tribes that inhabited the Mississippi River Valley, stretching from Lake Mikago through Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, and Arkansas. Of the original dozen tribes, only 5 still survive: the Cahokia, the Kaskakia, the Michigamia, the Peoria, and the Tamaroa. It is estimated that around 10,000 Illiniwek tribal members lived along the great rivers before European contact in the 17th century decimated the population. The Piasaw had the face of an angry, bearded man with a mouth full of sharp teeth. It had a scaly body, deer antlers, bat-like wings, and 4 legs. Its tail was like a scorpion's and ended with the flukes of a fish. Legend has it that before people lived along the banks of the Mississippi, the Piasaw preyed upon buffalo, carrying them up to his cave high in the cliffs that lined the river. But soon after the Illini arrived, the Piasaw grabbed a member of the tribe. From then on, the creature only hunted humans. The Piasaw preyed upon the Illini tribe, snatching people up until whole villages lay empty. Many warriors tried for years to destroy the creature, but it could not be killed. Then a vision came to the tribe's leader, Chief Awatoga. He would act as bait, luring the Piasaw to him, while several warriors hid nearby with poison-tipped arrows. When the great creature picked up Awatoga, his warriors shot it full of arrows. To celebrate the event, the Illini, for whom the state of Illinois is named, painted a pictograph of the Piasaw high up on the rocky bluffs near the Mississippi River. Father Jacques Marquette, a famous missionary, was the first white man to explore the Mississippi River. He first told of his discovery of the Piasaw pictograph, upon which the boldest Indians dared not long rest their eyes, in 1673. In his story from 1836, the most famous story of the Piasaw, Professor John Russell claimed to have discovered the cave where the menacing beast took its victims. According to Russell, the floor of the cave was covered with human bones. Almost 40 years later, 2 other scholars backed Russell's story. Even before Europeans arrived in the Americas, the stories of Pukwudgies were already old. The Wampanoag, Mohican, and Algonquin Indians believed Pukwudgies had once lived in harmony with humans, but it turned against them. They lived in the wild woods and marshes of the eastern seaboard, and, according to the legends, it was best to leave the Pukwudgies quietly in peace. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem, The Song of Hiawatha, refers to the mischievous Pukwudgies. The Indian word means person of the wilderness. A human who annoyed a Pukwudgie might just be the victim of some unpleasant trickery, but they also might be pushed from a cliff, shot with arrows, or have their children stolen. Pukwudgies could create fire, luring people into deep woods to their doom. Like leprechauns, the legendary little people of Ireland, Pukwudgies were capricious. How dangerous they were varied from region to region. Legends of the Pukwudgies stretched from Canada to southern New England and west to the Great Lakes. In some places they were benign, even helpful to humans. In others they were mischievous but harmless. And in other regions they were murderous. In Native American lore, Pukwudgies had the following traits and abilities: to appear and disappear at will, to transform into other animals, the ability to use magic, the use of poison arrows, and the creation of fire at will. Pukwudgies control Te Paiwankas, which are believed to be the souls of Native Americans they have killed. They range in size too, from 3 feet to knee height. They could disappear at will and in some places could transform into dangerous animals like cougars. Pukwudgies are often tied to specific locations, even today. Many reported sightings come from the woods of Massachusetts. In fact, the police in Freetown, Massachusetts have put up a Pukwudgie crossing sign near the Freetown State Forest. Freetown is a state park located in Fall River, Freetown, and Lakeville, Massachusetts. Of course, Fall River is infamous as the home of Lizzie Borden. Pukwudgies are also rumored to live near the haunted Moundsville State Penitentiary in Indiana and Round Rock in Texas, an area notorious for Bigfoot encounters. Whether Pukwudgies are a sign of further paranormal activity or simply seen by those who would like to believe is unclear, but their status as one of the oldest mythic creatures in North America is uncontested. Now, I'm a First Nations person from a reservation in Canada. I grew up in different reserves with different family members. We all have a common belief. If something otherworldly is bothering you, then someone is inviting it in. We believe that these negative powers are always seeking a way to influence people. Anyhow, this happened when I was about 7 years old. My sister and I were visiting our grandparents' house. The adults decided to go to bingo, and they got the eldest cousin to babysit everyone. His name was Corey, who was at the time 16. Now, my grandparents' home has a few trees around the property that they planted, and outside of that is a mile of straight field that they use for farming. We were outside all day there. My cousin Corey was sitting on the patio as we were all jumping on the trampoline, and he was watching us. I went inside, and when I came back out, I jumped up on the edge of the patio to jump off onto the trampoline. My sister, who was 5 at the time, and my other cousin, who was also 5, were already on the trampoline, and they stood in my way. Now, I kept telling them to move, and as I was about to jump, I noticed that they were completely fixated on the field. So I looked towards the field too. There were 2 strange figures coming towards our location. The field is about a mile long, like I said, but you could see 2 huge black things kind of hopping, coming down the field. They would come up and then down, like a snake taking a peek, and their movement was in perfect unison. I called out to Corey and pointed towards the field, and he told us all to get inside the house and lock up because he didn't know what the hell they were. So we did as we were told. I don't remember much after going in, but it was like I just came out of a trance and started crying. My sister was beside me crying, and my other cousin Charlene, who was about 11 at that time, was also crying, holding my little cousin Cass. I got up to go to the front door, and Corey was running back in. He said those things were circling the house, and he was trying to run across the road to the neighbors. Now, for whatever reason, the phone had just stopped working, and it was just a bunch of kids in a house. I went back to the couch to sit with my sister so we could comfort each other. When I got to her, she told me to look at the window, so I did. And those things were looking in. They had their hands against the window as they peeked in. Now here's the crazy shit. They looked like crocodiles, but also strangely human. I mean, they didn't have the extended snout of a crocodile. They had 5 fingers, but they weren't human fingers. They had long nails with crocodile-like skin and walked standing upright. They had like this long black cloak or something on. So they stood at the window for only a few seconds and took off. Now, soon after that, our grandparents got home with my uncle. We all went running to them crying, telling them what had happened. My grandparents were very traditional and told us that they had to leave and needed us to go to my aunt's on another reserve. My aunt came to get us not long later, and my uncle was upset. He drove all around that field looking for whatever those things were. But when we jumped into my aunt's old van to go to her house, we saw those things behind our grandparents' house running south. You know, at one point, I tried to convince myself that the whole damn experience was just a dream. But I was just bullshitting myself. Over the years, I would bring it up at family gatherings, and everyone who was there at the time would recall the events of that terrifying night.
They got ranges, heaters, power tools, they got TV, toasters, waiting pools, they got hi-fi hammers, hoses, rakes, they got all the very finest makes. Stop and shop at Kmart, get the best in name brand merchandise. They guarantee the quality and discount the price. They got washers, dryers, bassinets, they got sprinklers, toasters, wire nets, they got broilers, records, vacuum cleaners, barbecues to roast your wieners, ranges, heaters, power tools, they got TV, toasters, waiting pools, they got hi-fi hammers.
I had a friend back in high school who used to take people to this haunted burial ground that his father showed him. I don't remember what tribe it was, but it was of a Native American origin. I only went because I believed it to be complete bullshit. There's a tree there that you can sit on, and supposedly a spirit haunts the tree. And if you sit on the branch long enough, it'll reach out and touch you. So me and several others sat on this branch as I was looking to disprove it, and within less than a minute, we heard footsteps fast approaching behind us. Now keep in mind it was pitch black at midnight away from the city, so it was very dark, and I turned around to see, of course, and saw nothing. All of my friends ran, and I did too, even though I was a skeptic, but that experience made the hairs on my neck stand up straight. Later on, we took a photograph of us in front of the tree, and to my surprise, there were various orbs floating around in the picture. But the story doesn't end here. You see, the tree wasn't really the scary part. We took our cars up to a trail which was also supposedly haunted. When we got there, we all sat up on a bench, and my friend brought a Ouija board and convinced us to use it. Now until then, I thought Ouija boards were complete bullshit, complete fiction. We started using it, asking it questions that the people that were playing could not have known the answer to. For instance, I asked the board what my grandmother's name was that had passed away, and when it spelled out her name, which was Beverly, my heart nearly dropped into my stomach. To make it worse, after we said goodbye on the board and started walking down the trail where the Indian burial ground was, I heard some things that to this day I cannot explain. Now, the first thing that really scared me was that we heard whispering coming from all areas of the brush and bushes around us, and I wasn't the only one that heard them. Second, we heard a baby crying. That's right, a baby crying. Now you know that doesn't make any sense at all. To make it worse, that whole time I had a strange sense that I was being watched, and I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. Unfortunately, the terror didn't stop there. It seemed as though from my contact with the Ouija board, I'd brought an unwelcome guest back to my home. The first night, I had a bit of trouble sleeping. Now, normally I always have to sleep in complete darkness. I never leave the TV on, and I shared a room with my older brother at the time who just happened to not be home that night. Basically, I left the TV on, and I never do that. To my surprise, I woke up at about 4:30 in the morning and the TV was off. I didn't set the timer and my brother hadn't come home. And so I thought to myself, it's probably just a coincidence. Maybe the power had gone out or something. So I turned the TV back on, and that's when I heard a loud thud. I have a sliding mirror closet door, and something struck the door and made it move. I thought to myself, something must have fallen down inside, and I'd check it in the morning, even though it scared the shit out of me. Somehow, finally, I convinced myself that it was nothing and fell back asleep. But the next morning when I woke up and opened the door to check what had fallen, nothing was there. Now at that point, I definitely regretted ever touching the board because my father, who admittedly was somewhat superstitious, had warned me not to mess with the occult. So either way, it was quiet for the next few days until one night, me and my brother awoke to his laptop blasting music on full volume in the middle of the night. And there was more weirdness. The night before, he placed the computer under his bed, and that morning it was on his desk and sitting open. Also, there wasn't even a music or media player program open. He literally had to pull the goddamn battery out to get it to stop. Now, for whatever reason, after that experience, I didn't have any more encounters with whatever I'd brought home with me. To this day, though, I'm now a strong believer in the supernatural and the unseen, no question about it. I don't think I'll ever be able to explain what happened that night, but my brother even dismissed my claims about the burial ground until, of course, his computer seemed to take on a life of its own. All I know is, thank God the event stopped, but I know I'll never use a Ouija board ever again. And yes, now I'm a total believer. And that old thing about messing around in Native American burial grounds, I recommend you research it online or check out a book from the library. Don't ever, and I mean ever, go into one of these locations just for kicks or even as a curiosity seeker, because you may end up regretting it for the rest of your life. What comes to mind when you hear the word werewolf? For many people, the term conjures images of howling, bloodthirsty monsters prowling the moors in search of human prey. Thoughts of silver bullets, the full moon, and the painful and horrific transformation of a man into an inhuman beast may come to mind. Many people consider the werewolf to be a European myth that has become part of Western popular culture only via television, comics, and movies. And they would be wrong. Texas and Louisiana actually have quite a rich tradition of werewolf and other shape-shifting creature legends. While there are almost certainly elements of truth to them, it's often impossible to separate what is fact from what is myth and hyperbole. One of the more fascinating Texas legends is the tale of the Beast of Bear Creek. Older residents of the Texas Hill Country may be familiar with the story of the Beast of Bear Creek. It was widely believed among the early settlers of Kimball County that an old Native American shaman, among the last survivors of his tribe, had the ability to change from his normal human form into that of a large wolf. The old medicine man, it was said, would seek revenge on the white men who had decimated his tribe by transforming into his wolf persona and roaming the countryside at night, killing everything from livestock to unfortunate settlers who were caught outside after dark. Tales of shapeshifters and skinwalkers permeate the folklore of many Native American tribes. But what makes this particular example unusual is that many of the white settlers of Kimball County, in particular those near the old town of Clio, believed the story to be 100% true. So much so that the image of the Beast of Bear Creek, as the monster became known, was immortalized in solid rock. A man named N.Q. Patterson, who lived in Kimball County during the time when the Beast of Bear Creek roamed the countryside, was a man of many talents. At one time or another, he served as the county treasurer, county judge, and tombstone carver. It was his skill as a stone cutter and sculptor for which he is remembered to this day. Patterson apparently was unable to satisfy his artistic bent by carving tombstones, so he took to carving figures into the limestone cliffs and bluffs near and around Bear Creek. Of the many images created by Patterson, one in particular has become quite well known. Dubbed the Clio face due to its proximity to the town of the same name, the large carving depicted a strange and fierce creature. The figure seemed part human and part animal. The nose was broad and protruded more than that of a person. The lips of the creature were curled back in a vicious snarl that revealed terrible fangs with which it could no doubt do terrible harm. The carving was quite large and became very well known in the region. Many came to the conclusion that this was a representation of the old shaman in his wolf guise, the Beast of Bear Creek. Had Patterson seen the monster himself? Was he merely basing his carving on the legends he'd heard, or was the Clio face merely a manifestation of Patterson's fertile imagination? If N.Q. Patterson ever revealed the answer to these questions, no one was ever able to find documentation of it. The Kimball County area continues to be a source of some strange creature reports. These days, they typically don't involve werewolves and/or shapeshifters. Rather, modern-day witnesses are reporting out-of-place mountain lions, black panthers, and the odd-looking hairless, bluish-gray canines often dubbed chupacabras by the media. Lost livestock is blamed on one of these culprits more often than not. Odd screams and howls still heard by the rural residents of the area, more often than outsiders would guess, are simply dismissed as coyotes. And to my knowledge, no one has ever reported a sighting of the Beast of Bear Creek for a very long time. And this is not surprising, considering that the town of Clio is now all but a ghost town. All that remains of the settlement is the rickety structure that was once the Clio General Store, directly across Highway 2291. A building that, according to the sign over the door, once served as the Bear Creek Community Center. The people are all gone now, of course. And whatever the Beast of Bear Creek was, will probably never be known.
His mind was full of dark thoughts, and the demon spoke to him. His wild eyes and words frightened his people, and he became an outcast, shunned by all. One day, in a fury of rage and pain, he attacked old Kanhikan, a local wise man. The demon-possessed man killed the venerable sage on the shores of a beautiful lake near his home, and then ran away, afraid of what the people would do to him when they found out. But the gods had seen the murder and were angry. They captured the demon-possessed man and transformed him into a terrible serpent as a punishment for the murder of the good Kanhikan. Then the serpent was cast into the lake, condemned forever to remain at the scene of his crime. The people living near the lake called the serpent Naha'ik, or lake demon. They would offer sacrifices to it before traveling upon its waters, but the offerings did not always appease the monster. Many times a fierce storm would fall upon the lake, and Na'ik would rise from the roiling waters to claim a life. Once a man who was watering his horse at the lake saw the monster rise up from the depths and pull the poor animal under. And so the curse of Na'ik continued to plague the residents of the lake. Then the white man came, and they scorned the tale of the lake demon. They began taking timber from the land nearby and floating the logs down to Lake Okanagan. One evening, as a local man worked on the raft of newly sown logs, he chanced to look up and saw a long serpent with a horse-shaped head and a green, undulating body. It raised its head out of the water and stared deeply into the man's eyes. The man started shaking from head to toe and scrambled backwards toward shore. The demonic eyes of the giant creature gleamed with malevolence, and he scrambled up the bank and ran for his life. Not long after, a resident set off in a canoe with his horses roped behind, leading them across the lake. Suddenly, the horses began screaming and thrashing in the water and then disappeared underneath the waves. The canoe tipped backwards, and the man desperately pulled his knife and cut the ropes just in time to save himself from being dragged into the murky depths. The horses were never seen again. Thus was Naha'ik's first encounter by the white man at Lake Okanagan. The monster was seen many times through the years. Often it appeared like a long tree trunk or a floating log, but it would move against the current. Swimmers vanished, boats were attacked, and sometimes the monster would rise up from the waters and grab birds from midair. In 1942, the monster was rechristened Ogo Pogo, after a line in an old song. It has been seen many times and continues to haunt the waters of Lake Okanagan to this day. They say that the Wampus Cat used to be a beautiful Indian woman. The men of her tribe were always going on hunting trips, but the women had to stay home. The Indian woman secretly followed her husband one day when he went hunting with the other men. She hid herself behind a rock, clutching the hide of a mountain cat around her, and spied on the men as they sat around their campfires telling sacred stories and doing magic. According to the laws of the tribe, it was absolutely forbidden for women to hear the sacred stories and see the tribe's magic. So when the Indian woman was discovered, the medicine man punished her by binding her into the mountain cat skin she wore, and then transforming her into a terrible monster, half woman and half mountain cat. Ever after, she was doomed to roam the hills, howling desolately, because she desires to return to her normal body. A man was hunting one night with his dogs when they both whimpered and ran off the path. At that moment, the woods were overpowered with a horrible smell like that of a wet animal that had fallen into a log after it messed with a skunk. Then something howled on the path behind him, and the man whirled around, dropping his rifle. His heart pounding with fear, the man found himself staring into the big, glowing yellow eyes of the Wampus Cat. The creature had huge fangs dripping with saliva. It looked kind of like a mountain lion, but it was walking upright like a man. Then it howled, and the man's skin nearly turned inside out in horror. With a scream of terror, the man leapt backwards and ran as fast as he could through the woods, the Wampus Cat on his heels. He fled to the home of a friend who lived nearby and burst through the front door, only a breath ahead of the creature. His friend slammed the door in the face of the Wampus Cat. Instantly, it started shuddering under the weight of the attacking monster. The man's friend grabbed his Bible and started reading aloud from the Psalms. Upon hearing the holy words, the Wampus Cat howled in frustration and then slowly abandoned its attack and went back into the woods. The man spent the rest of the night at his friend's place. When he went home at daybreak, he found his dogs huddled in the barn, shaken but still alive. The man never hunted after dark again. When I was about 10 years old, I went on a field trip with my 4th grade class to a summer camp. For the most part, it was a typical experience. Rafting, bad food in the mess hall, hiking, campfires, etc. Hell, one of my friends did the typical movie thing and brought some of his dad's Playboy magazines from home. We were supposed to be there for 4 days. I only lasted 2. Anyway, it was late at night because I stayed up to do the trash duty and clean the mess hall. After I picked up the final granola bar wrapper, I made my way to the showers to clean up before turning in for the night. Halfway through, I hear a loud shuffling sound outside the showers. Now, I assume it's my friends pranking me as they typically did and got out of the shower. Now, just to put this into perspective, the showers and the boys' cabins are a good walk away with no way to illuminate your surroundings. That's why they shower before dark and in groups to make sure nobody gets lost. Now, for someone like me, who's by himself having to navigate his way through the woods, it's pretty fucking terrifying. And to make matters worse, the flashlight I brought was back at the cabin. So I was stuck having to navigate my way back with a piece of shit lantern that barely gave me enough light. So anyway, I grabbed the lantern and started to walk to the cabins. About halfway through, I heard this ungodly moan coming right in front of me. I panicked and dropped the lantern, running in the opposite direction of the sound. And not seeing anything in my haste, I fell on something. I examined the thing that I fell on and realized it was squishy and soaking wet. I heard the moaning again from behind me and hauled ass to the direction of the cabins. I was instantly greeted by 3 flashlights and lots of concerned looks. Apparently, the other campers heard the moans and the counselors came to investigate, only to find me covered in head to toe in fucking blood. They brought me back to the cabins and I was immediately bombarded with questions about what I saw. Frustrated by the machine gun of questions, my friends shut them up. The next day, I went home. And who the hell would blame me? I was not going to stay there after the shit I'd been through. You know, it may sound strange, but the truth is, I almost forgot about this incident until a little while ago when I was reminiscing about summer camp with a friend of mine who also stayed at the camp. I asked him what happened after I left, and what he told me sent shivers up my spine. Apparently, after I left, the moans at night got louder and closer to the cabins and freaked everybody the hell out. And as for that big thing that I fell on, while the counselors were investigating the source of the moaning, they found a deer on the trail I was on. The head was ripped clean off, and its entrails were laying in a separate pile next to the carcass. That's my encounter. To this day, it remains the scariest experience I've ever had. Everyone that I've told thinks that I'm bullshitting, but my friends who were there always defend me. Now, I still don't know what the hell it was in the woods that night. Over the years, a few people have tried to tell me that the moaning sound I heard was a mountain lion, but I have my doubts. The moans sounded too high to come from a mountain lion. But my girlfriend had another idea. She thought that the thing I saw was a creature called the Wampus Cat, which is apparently a mythological half-woman, half-cat monster that stalks the woods of East Tennessee. And it was a creature that was and is known among the Cherokee. The bottom line is, when I was a boy, enjoying the thrills and fun of summer camp, I had an encounter with a real-life monster.
From San Francisco comes
Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat. Rice-A-Roni, the flavor can't be beat. One pan, no boiling, cooking ease.
A flavor that is sure to please.
Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat.
Rice-A-Roni, the delicious break from potatoes. Now in 6 fabulous flavors.
One pan, no boiling, cooking ease.
A flavor that is sure to please.
Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat.
The Wendigo is a ravenous, terrifying creature of Algonquin Native American legends that devours human flesh to survive, though regardless of how much they eat, their hunger remains, which is reflected by their gaunt appearance. They are considered malevolent supernatural creatures of great spiritual power who were strongly associated with the harsh northern winters and starvation. They are believed to roam the forests where the Algonquins once lived, and those that have disappeared over the years are rumored to have been eaten by these creatures. Many Wendigo sightings have been reported over time, not only by Native Americans, but by white settlers as well. The Wendigo is extremely fast and possesses unnatural strength, despite how frail it may appear. The older one becomes, the more powerful it becomes. As its corruption spreads throughout the forest, so does its influence over nature. Some can control woodland creatures, and others are so powerful they are said to be able to control the weather. The Wendigo stands between 10 and 14 feet tall and is gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bones. Its complexion is ashen with eyes pushed back deep into their sockets, resembling a skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it has are tattered and bloody, pulled back over its jagged, misshapen teeth. It is an unclean creature and gives off the odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. The word Wendigo comes from Algonquin, the common translation being the evil spirit that devours mankind. They are also known as spirits of the lonely places. According to the legend, a Wendigo is created when a human must resort to cannibalism in order to survive. In the past, this occurred when indigenous people and settlers became stranded due to the extreme winters of the northern forests of North America. In some instances, the survivors were compelled to cannibalize the dead. Other versions tell of those displaying greed, selfishness, or spiritual imbalance, whom also became a Wendigo. The Wendigo is insidious and predatory. It is extremely hostile towards humans, which it will most definitely kill given the opportunity. The Wendigo is a gluttonous creature with an insatiable appetite which drives it to perpetually kill and eat. The Wendigo will prey on those who are separated from a group or alone. It also has the ability to mimic human voices and will use this skill to lure people away from safety. Once isolated, it will tear them apart with its teeth and claws and devour them. But what of the Wendigo's vulnerabilities? What could one do as a mortal man in the face of such power and evil? The primary weakness of the Wendigo is its frozen heart. Destroying its heart will release, but also kill the human trapped within the beast. This must be done using silver bullets, a pure silver blade, or a silver stake. The shattered heart must be locked within a silver box and buried in a church graveyard or some other hallowed or sanctified ground. The Wendigo's corpse must then be dismembered with a silver blade, salted, and burned to ashes, and afterwards scattered on the wind. Failing this, the beast would rise again and resume its unfathomable acts of terror and evil. One night on Cape Cod at Gay Head, a Mashpee woman and her children were alone in their wigwam. The children were sound asleep in their blankets, and their mother sat knitting beside her central fire pit. As customary, her door flap was wide open. Suddenly, she became aware of someone approaching her doorway and went to see who it might be. A sailor stood outside, and she asked him, "What do you want?" He replied, "I'd like to come inside and warm myself by your fire, because my clothes are wet, and I feel chilled to the bone." She invited him inside and offered a place for him to sit beside the fire to dry out and warm himself. She placed another log on her fire, then resumed her knitting. As she watched the fire, she noticed that she could see the fire right through the sailor's legs, which were stretched out between her and the fire, as if he were a ghost. Her fear of him increased, but since she was a brave woman, she kept on with her knitting while keeping a suspicious eye toward the sailor. Finally, the sailor turned to the Indian woman and said, "Do you want any money?" Her first thought was not to answer his question, and then he repeated, "Do you want any money?" She replied, "Yes." The sailor explained, "If you really want a large amount of money, all you have to do is go outdoors behind your wigwam. Beside a rock, you will find there buried a kettle full of money. I thank you for your hospitality. Good night." And he went away. The Mashpee woman did not go outdoors immediately, as she wanted to think about the sailor's proposal. She sat and knitted and thought for a while longer. Still, she felt frightened from the evening's experience and was reluctant to leave her wigwam. More knitting time elapsed. And then she thought, I might as well go out and see if the sailor spoke the truth, to see if there really is a kettle of money out there. She took her hoe and went outside to the back of her wigwam, and easily saw the place described by the sailor. She began to dig with her hoe. She realized that every time she struck her hoe into the ground, she heard her children cry out loudly, as if in great pain. She rushed indoors to see what was their trouble, but they were soundly sleeping in their blankets. Again and again she dug with her hoe. Each time her children cried out loudly to her. Each time she rushed in to comfort them, only to find them soundly asleep as she'd left them. After these episodes had occurred several times, the mother decided to give up digging for the night. She thought she would try again early next morning, after bright daylight, and her children were awake. Morning came, but she wondered if she'd only dreamed last night's happenings. Her children were eating their breakfast when she went out to the digging place, and there was her hoe standing where she'd left it. But she could see that someone else had been there in the meantime and had finished digging while she slept. Before her, she saw a big round hole. She knew someone had dug up the hidden treasure. She was too late for the pot of gold promised by the ghostly sailor. But again she thought and wondered, but was I really too late? Again she thought, that sailor may have been the evil spirit in disguise, or even a ghost. Perhaps he was tempting me to see whether I cared more for my children or more for the gold. Nevertheless, the Mashpee woman and her children continued to live in their village for a long, long time, even without the benefit of the ghost's kettle of gold. The Navajo believed that death could be a dangerous business. According to the legend of the Chindi, a person's dying breath could contain everything bad or out of harmony about them, and it could become a ghost made of their worst traits. As this Native American ghost story goes, once set loose, the Chindi is said to cause serious harm to the living. After all, they're filled with the most desperate and dire human characteristics, like hatred, jealousy, and greed. They can inflict ghost sickness, which causes hallucinations and death on anyone who crosses their path. Navajo legend maintains that destroying the deceased's belongings or refusing to say their name could prevent the Chindi from causing serious harm. Alternatively, they try to ensure that people died outdoors. That way, the vengeful spirit could never disappear in the wind, usually in the form of a dust devil. If the whirlwind spun counterclockwise, that meant the person who died had a great number of evil habits. Some Navajo people also allegedly employed ghost bees to fend off vengeful Chindi spirits. These were often hollowed out berries or turquoise strung together. But of course, the Navajo couldn't always control where someone died. If a tribal member died indoors, usually in a Navajo dwelling called a hogan, then the living had few options. The Chindi now allegedly controlled the residence, so the living abandoned it. Some people, however, were said to have used the Chindi for their own evil devices. Navajo medicine men could allegedly summon a Chindi to attack someone who had wronged them. Other myths claim that the Navajo witches could poison someone with ghost sickness by taking a piece of the corpse and making it into a bead or powder and then slipping it into someone's food. Given that in modern times most deaths occur indoors, there's no telling how many Chindi could be running amok.
You're listening to the Blackwater Media Radio Network, the finest in digital audio entertainment. This is Blackwater Media coming to you from the great city of Atlanta. I live in a small border town along the tip of South Texas. About a week ago, my brother told me he saw something that's been making him question his sanity ever since. He's the type of guy who will get up in the middle of the night and check outside the house to see if everything's all right. Some of the neighbors have had some of their property stolen, so he likes to make sure it's all good. Now, according to him, it was around 3:15 in the morning and he heard a chorus of dogs barking loudly and aggressively down the alley behind our house. So he got up, walked down the hall and stared out the back door window while facing south. After gazing out the window for about 5 minutes, he swears he saw what he can only describe as a combination of a humanoid type figure with the head of a wolf-looking animal run down the alley in a flash. He even described being able to see its ribs protruding through its skin. As it ran, he said it looked like it was bending over with its palms flat on the ground, kind of like the way someone would bend down to touch their toes if they were stretching. He also added that it didn't really look too hairy, but appeared to have human skin, all while possessing a translucent white smoke color all around it. Even as it was hunched over, he said it must have been about 5 feet tall and maybe 5 feet long overall. The next day, he told my parents about it and they happened to mention it to one of the neighbors. Turns out a few days before my brother's sighting, their boxer had been stolen from their backyard. Instead of thinking my parents and my brother were a bunch of kooks, the lady neighbor whom we found out came from a Native American background and whose Native American mother had given her that dog as a gift told my parents it was probably what Native Americans refer to as a skinwalker, and it was probably looking for her stolen dog. She also happened to mention that whoever stole that dog was probably cursed by the skinwalker by now.
The telling of scary stories around a campfire is a tradition that is likely nearly as old as mankind itself. While tales of ghosts, goblins, and murderous psychopaths can rattle the cage of nearly anyone, what better subject for a campfire story could there be than a cannibalistic and murderous Sasquatch? The story of a haunted house might be creepy, but unless you're actually staying in the house in question, it is easily and quickly forgotten once the marshmallows and chocolate and graham crackers appear at the fire. Tales of a creature many people regard as being real, stalking the very woods in which you've pitched your tent, however, are not always so easy to put aside. One such terrifying tale is the story of a Bigfoot war that allegedly took place in eastern Oklahoma during the mid-1850s. The story of the LaFleur County Bigfoot War is one that I've heard bits and pieces of through the years. So let's take a look at the story and see what we can find out. It's said that in or around 1855, a band of Choctaws in what is now LaFleur County and farmers in what is now Arkansas were experiencing some terrifying events. It all began in a rather benign way when the theft of vegetables, a few head of livestock, and other foodstuff by stealthy bandits in the night. The thieves were cagey, quiet, and never seen. They were also smart, as somehow they never ventured into Choctaw encampments on the nights when the watchman was in place. Neither did the bandits ever fall into the trap set for them by farmers outside of Indian Territory. Those charged with finding and capturing these marauders began to develop a begrudging respect for the wiliness of their adversaries as time went by and the petty thefts continued. While the thefts were annoying and did cause some hardships, neither the Choctaw or the neighboring Anglo farmers were afraid of the food bandits. However, things changed once women and children began to go missing. Spurred by reports of these kidnappings, a group of 30 Choctaw cavalrymen were organized to hunt down the abductors. The group was led by Joshua LaFleur, a man of mixed Choctaw and French blood who was deeply respected by his fellow tribesmen. Also joining the search party was a Choctaw warrior named Hamas Tubby and his 6 sons. The Tubbies were huge men, all approaching 7 feet in height and weighing in at more than 300 pounds each, and were regarded as fierce warriors and expert horsemen. The Tubbies were so effective in mounted warfare that despite their massive size, they became known as the Light Horsemen. This contingent of searchers, armed to the teeth, set out into the region known today as the McCurtain County Wilderness Area to search for the kidnappers. After riding all day, the searchers finally arrived in the area where they believed the bandits to be hiding. LaFleur brought his troops to a halt, stood up in his stirrups, and surveyed the area with a spyglass. It is unclear exactly what LaFleur saw, but whatever it was, he ordered his men to charge toward a stand of pines roughly 500 yards distant. LaFleur and the Tubby men led the attack. As the troops closed the distance between themselves and the stand of pines where the kidnappers were thought to be hiding, they were assaulted by a tremendous stench, the unmistakable odor of decay and decomposition. The horses of most of the men began to buck and rear, tossing their riders. Only the mounts of LaFleur and the Tubby men were disciplined enough to remain composed, allowing the 8 men to continue through the pines. As the men cleared the small wooded patch, they came upon a large earthen mound. Scattered across the mound were the bodies of children and women in various stages of decomposition. LaFleur and the Tubbies caught a glimpse of a number of the murderers fleeing into the tree line on the opposite side of the mound. Only 3 of the killers stood their ground to meet the charge of the light horsemen. It was at this time that the cavalrymen realized they were not going up against any human foe. Rather, standing before them, snarling and beating their chests, were 3 huge, hairy-covered creatures. Despite what must have been a shocking sight, LaFleur drew his pistol and saber, spurred his mount, and charged. As LaFleur approached the nearest ape, it took a mighty swipe and struck his horse in the head, killing it instantly. LaFleur managed to roll off the falling horse, quickly jumping to his feet, and fired multiple shots into the chest of the creature. Once his pistol was empty, LaFleur attacked the ape with his saber, opening up gaping wounds on the animal, which roared in rage and pain. LaFleur's assault on the creature was so quick, and the shock of seeing hair-covered monsters so great, that the Tubby men hesitated, completely stupefied, before entering the fray. This delay allowed one of the other 2 apes to get behind LaFleur, who was intensely focused on the ape he had engaged. The second beast grabbed LaFleur's head with 2 huge hands and ripped it from his shoulders. The horrible sight jolted the Tubby warriors into action, and they opened fire on the 3 Sasquatches with 50 caliber Sharps buffalo rifles. 2 of the beasts were killed instantly, dropping in their tracks. The third creature was wounded but turned and fled till the lethal shot could be fired. Robert Tubby, only 18 years old but already 6'11" and well over 300 pounds, spurred his horse, ran down the injured ape, and dispatched him with his hunting knife. As the rest of the troop, after gathering their panicked horses, joined them, the light horsemen surveyed the area. The bodies of dead women and children, mostly partially devoured, littered the area. The smell of decay, along with the terrible odor of the beast's feces, caused many of the men to vomit. After composing themselves, the men gathered the remains of the unfortunate women and children and buried them. They also buried their leader, Joshua LaFleur. As for the 3 ape-like monsters, their bodies were placed upon a huge bonfire and burned. Their hellish task complete, the Choctaw warriors returned to Tuskahoma, where it's said that the mighty Tubby men were plagued by terrible nightmares for years afterward. It's one hell of a story, but is any of it true? We do know that the Tubbies existed, so too did a man named Joshua LaFleur. You won't find any official documents that LaFleur died in battle. In fact, outside of the realm of folklore, there's virtually no information to establish that the LaFleur County Bigfoot War took place at all. Having said that, it is possible that the LaFleur County incident was actually based on a real event that took place in a different location. According to a Bigfoot researcher named Jim King, the answer might be yes. King believes the LaFleur County story is based on an event that took place much farther west in Kiowa territory, an event related to him by an Indian elder. According to the story, Kiowa women were placed in a special teepee or tent on the edge of the camp when they started their menstrual cycle. The women stayed there being tended to only by older women until their cycle was complete. The elder told King that women were considered unclean during their cycles, and Kiowa warriors were not only forbidden any physical contact with females during this time, they were not allowed to even look upon them. This seems a bit harsh, of course, but it's not too different than the way many cultures treated menstruating women in the past. The elder said that once long ago there had been trouble with ape-like creatures who were attracted by the scent and pheromones emanating from the tent where the menstruating women were housed. Since the tent was on the edge of the encampment, it proved to be an easy target for renegade apes who were said to have entered and carried off women on several occasions. To make a long story short, the Kiowa leadership decided that this was unacceptable and put together a group of warriors to hunt down the kidnappers. The searchers did manage to track an ape back to its lair and killed not only it, but the entire family unit. Could the LaFleur County story have its roots in the tale told to Jim King by the Kiowa elder? Is there any truth at all, even the smallest grains, in either tale? I've heard that many put their faith in the LaFleur County version simply due to the name of the unfortunate Joshua LaFleur. They wouldn't have named the county after him if it wasn't true, and other similar statements abound. I, however, have not been able to find anything saying Lafleur County was named after Joshua Lafleur. According to the Oklahoma Historical Society website, the name honors the prominent Lafleur family of the Choctaw Nation. Could Joshua Lafleur have been one of the prominent Lafleur family? It's certainly possible, but there does not seem to be any documentation singling out Joshua or his actions as the reason for the naming of the county. The story of the Lafleur County Bigfoot War, even if totally fictional, does seem to point to the fact that enormous hair-covered ape-like animals have been thought to reside in the region for a very long time, a time long before the Patterson-Gimlin film brought Bigfoot into America's consciousness. Add to this the beliefs of many other Native American tribes from across the North American continent, who have long told stories of these creatures snatching women and children, and the anecdotal evidence stack grows taller. Truth be told, the idea of child or a woman snatching Sasquatches continues to thrill, terrify, and enthrall us to this very day. It may very well be that the tale of the Lafleur County Bigfoot War was inspired by actual less dramatic events, like the Ape Canyon incident. Over the years, such a story would be embellished and grow to mythic proportions. It is all but inevitable, as a good scary story is irresistible. Don't be too hard on those who might have added to the original facts. After all, we all know that the most frightening types of campfire stories will always have one thing in common. They could really happen. There have long been tales of lost civilizations and strange peoples that have faded into the sands of time. Such enigmatic races lurk in the tales and history of nearly every major culture, and they span the range of the supernatural to pure myth to the possibly real. One tale of a mysterious lost race comes to us from the Appalachian Mountains of the United States, and it tells of a strange race of albino, sun-fearing beings who supposedly roamed this land long before even the natives arrived. In the untamed wilderness along the southern Appalachian Mountains of the United States, the native Cherokee people have long told of a strange race of beings they called the Moon-Eyed People. This mysterious tribe was supposedly smaller than average humans, almost dwarfish in nature, very pale skin like pure white alabaster, with shocking white hair, generous beards and body hair, and inhumanly blue eyes, sensitive to light to the point that they were said to be unable to see in the daytime, hence their name. These moon-eyed people were purportedly completely nocturnal, hiding in the dark caves and underground caverns during the day, only to come out at night when the sun had retreated. And indeed, sunlight was said to be enough to kill them if they ever got caught out in the open during daylight hours. These strange, diminutive nocturnal denizens of the land were said to have been here long before the first native peoples had settled the area, and according to most legends, they were eventually expelled by local natives, although what form this expulsion takes varies from tradition to tradition. In some tales, it was the Creek people from the south who cast them out, or in others, it is the Cherokees themselves who waged a relentless campaign and full-out war against these pale-skinned creatures to drive them to other lands. The American botanist, naturalist, and physician Benjamin Smith Barton wrote of these people and their downfall back in 1797 in his book, New Views of the Origin of the Tribes and Nations of America. He said, "The Cherokee tell us that when they first arrived in the country which they inhabit, they found it possessed by certain moon-eyed people who could not see in the daytime. These wretches they expelled." Whatever happened to this enigmatic race, their legacy has supposedly remained behind in the ancient rock structures and mysterious pre-Columbian mounds and ruins that dot the landscape along the Appalachians from North Carolina all the way down through Georgia and Alabama, all said to have been created by the moon-eyed people. Perhaps the most famous of these is an 850-foot-long stone wall dated to 400 to 500 CE, which meanders through Fort Mountain State Park, just over the North Carolina border in Georgia, and is said to be a vestige of the bloody war between the mysterious Moon-Eyed people and the native Cherokee. There are countless other crude rock structures, walls, mounds, and forts scattered all along the Appalachians, as well as anomalous carvings, figurines, and a soapstone carving of conjoined figures now on display at the Cherokee County Historical Museum, said to be of these strange people. And no one really knows who made any of them except for the Cherokee themselves, who say it was the work of the Moon-Eyed people. Whoever built such structures has long remained a mystery, and when Europeans first came to the region, the natives, who were not known for making such fort-like structures themselves, claimed that they had always been there, saying that they were constructions of the Moon-Eyed people. Interestingly, while Cherokee folklore has many tales of supernatural beings and various spirits, the Moon-Eyed people are never spoken of in such a manner, rather being described matter-of-factly as physically another race inhabiting the same lands. Of course, with such an oddity as a cryptic tribe of bizarre dwarf subterranean albino people, almost like vampires in their intolerance for sunlight, and who predated the native people and constructed their mysterious mounds and forts, there is bound to be theorizing as to who or what they may have been. One of the most popular ideas is that they are evidence of native contact with European explorers who had made it to the New World long before history says they did, possibly connected to the legend of the Welsh-speaking Indians. The story of white-skinned, Welsh-speaking Indians in the New World originates with a 16th century manuscript published by Welsh antiquarian Humphrey Llwyd, in which he writes of Welsh settlers coming to these shores in the 12th century, in particular a Prince Madoc, who along with his followers was said to have immigrated to America from Wales in about 1170, landing somewhere in the vicinity of Mobile Bay, Alabama. Madoc would supposedly end up shipping over hundreds of his followers to the New World, where they would disappear into the wilderness, never to return. In the following centuries, there were many stories of fair-skinned, blue-eyed natives who spoke a form of Welsh from the area, and these have been speculated to have been the descendants of these settlers. Indeed, there are many tales of blue-eyed Indians from the so-called New World, and perhaps this all has some part to play in the mystery of the Moon-Eyed people. Another idea put forth by Benjamin Smith Barton is that they were out-of-place descendants of members of the Guna people of Panama, who have such an uncommonly high rate of albinoism that they were once referred to as the White Indians, and who were reportedly able to see better at night. Another theory is that, rather than go to war, the natives of the land actually integrated with the Moon-Eyed people and absorbed them. Still, other more far-out theories are that these were some other species of human, a new race, or even ancient astronauts from another world. It is still unclear who or what the Moon-Eyed people were or may have been, and they remain a distinctly enigmatic lost civilization, if they ever existed at all. Who were these albino, sun-fearing people? Were they some lost race, descendants of pre-Columbian explorers, or even a new species, or alien interlopers? Or were these just a figment of folklore and myth? The answers to such questions remain obscure, but the tales of the Moon-Eyed people have persisted for over 1,000 years, and the idea that such a race of lost humanoids has been lost to history, and it captures the imagination.